Hello everyone, welcome back to Causality with Boris, broadcast from SobolevSpaces. In this video, I talk about mediation phenomenon, basic mediation diagram, causal mediation analysis, and total and direct effects are the three main topics in today's lesson. Now, be sure to watch to the end so that you can compare the takeaways with your notes. There will be extra material for this video. Click the link in the description and it will be sent to your inbox. Let's take a step back and remember factors that explain covariation of treatment and outcome. Some factors affect outcome, some affect treatment, and some affect both treatment and outcome. These are the pre-treatment factors. They got their values before treatment. Here is a new idea. Some post-treatment factors can affect the outcome too. Post-treatment means they got their values after treatment took place. When factors change their values as a result of treatment and then they affect the outcome, this is the mediation phenomenon. And we call these factors mediators. Mediation can describe a hypothetical mechanism of causation. For example, statins reduce low-density cholesterol, which reduces the risk of heart attack. We say lowering cholesterol mediates the protective effect of statins. In our running example, we compare hospital mortality as a function of the timing of hip fracture surgery. This figure shows postoperative complications. We wonder whether complications mediate the effect of delay on mortality. There are two plausible mechanisms. The first is immobilization. The bone is fixed with a cast. It keeps the bone from moving to heal. But staying in bed can lead to potentially fatal complications, pulmonary embolism and pneumonia. The second mechanism is inflammation and hypercoagulation. These two conditions can lead to stroke and myocardial infarction. Both increase the risk of death. What do these examples have in common? The effect of treatment is in part through indirect causation. The Venn diagram is another way to think about this. In this diagram, circles represent variations in treatment, outcome, and mediator. Their intersection shows covariation. For example, areas C and D together represent the covariance of treatment and outcome. We can split the total variance of outcome due to treatment into C and D. Area C is the covariance that the outcome and treatment share with the mediator. Here is the main hypothesis of mediation. The mediator explains the relationship between treatment and outcome. When we ignore the mediator, treatment and outcome, which otherwise independent, can appear related. When mediators are considered, the treatment effect can just disappear. Let me draw a basic mediation diagram. It consists of three nodes: treatment T, outcome Y, and mediator M. In a typical causal diagram, we start with the nodes for treatment and outcome. In the mediation diagram, we add another designated node for the mediator. And we want to evaluate its role in the forming of the treatment effect. Arrows are another element of causal diagrams. They show dependency between the nodes. They chart paths of influence. In a nutshell, a basic mediation diagram consists of two causal paths: a direct effect, then there is only one arrow between the treatment and outcome, or the effect can be indirect through changes in the mediator nodes. Mediators lie on the causal path between treatment and outcome. Conceptually, mediators explain how intervention leads to effect. Here is an example from the field of education. In this diagram, T is 1 for participating in an extended learning program. Y is 1 for passing exam. And M is 1 for more than 5 hours a week for homework. Some believe the program tends to increase time students spend on homework, as well as their chances to pass the exam. In addition, there is a perception that together, the program and extra homework time affect success more than each factor separately. We might wonder how homework by itself affects an exam grade. To summarize, the basic mediation diagram consists of only two paths: the direct effect and a causal chain. Both paths begin at the treatment node, but the chain goes to the outcome through the mediator. The basic mediation diagram represents three relationships that will be the subject of the causal mediation analysis: total, direct, and indirect effects. The total treatment effect describes changes in outcome through all causal paths. The direct and indirect effects produce the overall effect of the treatment. Direct effects through the direct influence and indirect effects through causal chains. The goal of mediation analysis is to examine whether the observed relationship between treatment and outcome is related to a third variable. It has several applications. One is to look for direct treatment effects in the presence of other factors. Another is to understand policy implications of direct and indirect effects. Let's use the example of hip fracture surgery to look at the relationship between treatment, mediator, and outcome. Previous studies show that timing of intervention is a modifiable factor in reducing postoperative mortality. However, the mechanisms of these reductions are less understood. Some argue that delay in surgery increases immobility, and immobility can cause inflammation and hypercoagulation. In turn, these conditions increase the risk of potentially fatal complications, such as pulmonary embolism, pneumonia, and myocardial infarction. We wonder if the incidence of complications explains the difference in mortality after early and delayed surgery. How do we find this out? We looked at differences in mortality by timing and asked whether they result from differences in the occurrence of complications after the early and delayed surgery. This is an example of looking for direct effects in the presence of other factors. Let's go back to the extended learning example. Here is the mediation diagram. T denotes the type of educational program the student receives. M denotes the amount of homework the student does. And Y is the student's grade on exam. Investigators go to a school district that doesn't offer extended learning. They recruit students. Then they randomly refer some of them to the program. Then they look for the difference in average hours of homework between the two groups. At the same time, they estimate the overall effect of the program on students' grades. In 2011 paper, 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝘶𝗵 points out that policy implications of this analysis may be to encourage homework effort. One explanation could be that instruction does not contribute significantly to the student's success, other than encouraging to spend more time on homework, and such encouragement could be done by less costly means. For example, counting homework time as a part of the final grade. In contrast to this theory, some teachers say the success is due to the unique curriculum, and more time for homework, while being a catalyst, cannot by itself explain the observed success. Typically, intervention studies measure the overall change in outcome in response to treatment. This doesn't take into account whether this change is due to other factors. When the goal is a direct effect of treatment, we aim to find the portion not mediated by other factors. Controlling for mediators in experiment will reduce the total effect to a direct one, if such exists. In observational studies, we approach the direct effect differently. It's still a change in outcome caused by a change in treatment. And here's the major departure. We consider the mediator at the value it would have taken after applying treatment. For example, medication review, which is an intervention, affects healthcare utilization, which is an outcome, by reducing the number of undiagnosed adverse drug events. If diagnosed, the condition is treated in the emergency department, and that's a mediating factor. Medication reviews influence therapeutic decisions. It can lead to stopping harmful medications or changing medication dosage. It can involve educating patients and physicians to improve their ability to manage prescribed medications. One research question is whether medication review reduces repeat emergency department visits. We can focus on the overall effect of this intervention. Alternatively, we can find its direct effect. Or we can ask whether medication review leads to changes in treatment decisions, which in turn may change healthcare utilization. Of course, the difference between the two is asking if change in outcome can be reliably attributed to the medication review only. From this perspective, mediation analysis can be defined as a decomposition of the overall treatment effect into direct and indirect components. Here is the main message of this video. The total effect of treatment is the result of direct and indirect influence. You learned that the phenomenon of mediation can be described using a basic mediation diagram. You learned that mediation analysis examines how the observed relationship between treatment and outcome is related to a third variable. Don't miss the discussion of the policy implications of causal mediation analysis. You watched another episode of Causality with Boris. Keep on watching.